Thank you so much. And again, right, I'm honored to be able to share this example with you. And before we start, I think it's really an interesting topic for me to talk about because, as the previous slide said, I'm roughly 20 years with Microsoft. I've worked on revenue forecast in a subsidiary, position, in a regional position, but also on a worldwide position, right? And I think those three perspectives has kind of like blended my opinion and very supportive of where we are today and how we do it today at Microsoft. So if we move to the next slide, I think this is a visualization that many of us are very familiar with. Starting on the left-hand side, the forecast, in 9 out of 10 organizations driven by finance starts, very few weeks before the quarter end. Hundreds of analysts started to build spreadsheets and making their assessments on the numbers that they have. So that's the first round and the many hours that go into the forecast cycle. Then when that has been done, and most of the time after the quarter close and the sales, are all locked and loaded, as we say, the product teams and the sales teams are coming together and giving their, assessments on their outlook that, has been put together in first instance. Another round of meetings and many, even more senior hours are going to be put into this forecast. And then last, right, to finalize it, because it needs to be, signed off by the CFO, the HQ, and the finance team. There is another round of numbers, crunching, meetings, long hours of discussions, and actually, many hours are going to be put in that forecast again before it finally gets submitted. Now, if you really think about it, and the reason why we started to look into machine learning is actually on the next slide. If you think about it from an accuracy point of view, just imagine, right, the 3 rounds of, I would almost say negotiation or forecasting assessment that I just discussed on the previous slide, put a opinion or a judgment on the numbers, right? I think that is one. Then the second bullet, which I think is also very important, is the time to market. Let's think about it, right? If I think about the previous slide, I think a forecast cycle, in our company normally took probably 4 weeks prior to the close to 2 weeks after to the close, right? So that's about 6 weeks. It says 3 here, but I think it's even more, right? If you really look into it. So, that was kind of like really big. And then, efficiency. I talked about the previous slides where we put hundreds of hours in there. And when you look to the right-hand side of this slide, you can actually see, what machine learning has given us. It's really, the human bias that has been taken out, the efficiencies of making a forecast really quick, and actually the analysts can actually work on projects that have a bigger impact for finance. And let me give then a flavor of when I worked in the worldwide teams, we always got the field forecast where people put a lot of time and effort in, and then what we did is actually, at the corporate level, we assessed that forecast, and every time we had to make an assessment on that number and put a judgment in there, like up or down, to be able to come with a number that was more reliable for the organization. If you think about and want to understand how it works at Microsoft, let's go to the next slide, because basically what we're doing is that we're going to have 2 different kind of forecast. It should show a product slide and a sales forecast. It's on the next slide. It's not moving, at least my slide. Yeah, there it is. It's like, right? The product forecast is super important, because ultimately the products is what we sell to our customers and what is our customers need, right? So it's really good and important for us to understand, what are the different products, that we're trying to sell and our customer need. Then ultimately we bring that together with the sales, because of course, there is a pipeline, there is market data, there is, expiring revenue, recurring revenue, and all this data we put to make an assessment on the forecast. And I think the bottom part of this slide is actually super important, because even though we have machine learning and artificial intelligence, which is really a great add-on, it will never be the machine alone. Because, if I make a quick link to this pandemic situation that we're in, right? And you will see and understand that machine learning uses a lot of historical data. This pandemic we've never seen. And a product, like Teams, which, took a leap step forward, in this last time period, was something that, we had to assess ourselves. So I think it's super important that we realize is that human interaction, will be needed, but it will be needed in a different way. And that is also why I think in general, in finance, we need to look at the profile of people that we have, and they might be different from the past to what we need in the future. If you look to the next slide, you get a little bit of an insight, what took us to get there. And what really took us to get there is basically on this slide, and also a little bit of the outcomes. Now, first of all, when you start on the left-hand side of this slide, it is 10 years of revenue data. And I just called out something that is already known. Most of our companies have, recurring data, new business, we have expiring contracts, we have macroeconomic trends, we have new product launches. All this data is being used historically to determine what we need. Then, of course, you need to have the finance analyst to be able to talk with the data scientist, right? Because it's really important for the data scientist to understand how they should read and use the financial data that they have available. And that all together comes into a machine learning and gives you the opportunity to do a, more accurate, unbiased, factual forecast, I would almost say, because it's a bridge to the top middle part of this slide, where previous pre-machine learning, there was kind of like an adjustment to be made, of about 3% of each forecast rounds that we have, and currently we're actually at 1.5%. But actually, if I'm really honest, and I think this slide, in all fairness, is probably a couple of months or a couple of forecast cycles older, I think the accuracy actually has improved even better, right? Because you learn from the forecast rounds where you have been off, and you're able to correct that the next time. So just think about that, using machine learning, saving hundreds, thousands of hours of field resources will give you ultimately a better forecast. And this is really, one of the eye openers, but takes time to get buy-in from your business leaders and finance leaders to trust and to rely on the machine learning forecast. But there are so much gains there to make, and start using your finance resources for much more relevant and ROI driven project. How many times in the past did we not spend on building the forecast and then explaining the forecast? So if I summarize it on the last slide that I have here, there's basically three things that I would like you to take away. It takes time. It's definitely not a journey that you can do in a month, in 6 months, or in a year. For Microsoft, it's really taken a couple of years to be able to convince the business leaders, the senior leadership team, but also actually the people in the field, that machine learning actually is a benefit. It saves you a lot of time. It gives you more accurate forecast number, and you can use your resources for different world. Secondly, technology. You need to have the right technology and a trust in the technology that it works. But what you could see from the presentation prior to this from Anand is that the technology is available. It's just how you can use it. And then thirdly, I think it's super important that you have buy-in from the business leaders, because ultimately forecasts and budgets are driving a large part of the sales cycles, and you want to make sure that what you report, potentially as an outlook to the street, or to make your own assessment for resources, is correct. So I would say time, technology, and business buy-in are the three essentials to be able to be successful at machine learning.